Boom!
Here
we go,
in the recording studio.
In the recording studio, up against this wall.
Yep.
Tulum, Mexico.
In the jungle.
New Year's Eve, 2020. We're ready to do this thing.
Totally. And we are outside, so it's likely there's going to be dogs or cars or birds, and that's okay.
This is just the universe giving you small hints to be even more and more present in what you're doing.
With us, here and now. And the last show we did was with Mohsen. It was right before he left for Canada to be at home with his girlfriend and his family for Christmas. And we stayed.
We did.
It was the first Christmas of my life, and I know yours too.
Yep.
Weren't with our families. Wasn't in the snow. Wasn't in the minus 20
We were not in the snow. We were on the beach.
We were on the beach.
We were on the beach, and the beach was bumping.
Yeah, it was. It absolutely was. It did not look like a pandemic in Mexico.
No, I mean, because... yeah. Anyway.
Smiles on everyone's faces, sun on everyone's skin, music bumping.
Yeah. We had, it was pretty interesting. So we were on the beach, we were in the water, Jonathan and I, and our friend Mark and our other buddy Amr, and we were all in the water and we were just hanging out. And actually started it off by doing, we're all, the four of us, sitting around in the water, standing around. And I recited one of Mark's poems, and he said...
Can you give it to us?
Yeah. It's something along the lines of, they floated off into the ocean of possibility. Here, they could make decisions about the future. They decided not to. Floating along was enough to fill their souls to the brim.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And that was a fun moment for us because we were all around, and then we just got super excited because it was Christmas and started screaming and splashing around
and beating our chests.
Be like, they decided not to. They decided not to.
Yeah.
And we decided to just be extremely totally present. And we were just screaming freedom.
It was great. People on the beach started screaming back to us.
Yeah, and part of that is with freedom to pick something as a rejection of everything else, and understanding that the acceptance of the presence and the rejection of the other things are something that arise mutually, and that if you haven't sacrificed the other things, then you haven't slayed the opponent, the final enemy, Bowser boss, before you can actually be present. Because as long as the other things exist as a possibility, then you're not even being present.
Yeah, and that includes us right now being tested with the background noise and trying to be present for this show. You know, even just getting to that beach for Christmas was led up to just a bunch of fun and festivities. Christmas Eve, we were out dancing, salsa dancing at a place called Karen's on Fifth Avenue. So we had this rooftop Airbnb.
Someone shut that truck off.
We had this rooftop Airbnb where everyone, or hostel where everyone was pre-drinking and getting ready to go out, and then
the energy within the kind of hostel is kind of like this engine of this truck, in the way that it just emanated and just going through and really building. But then you could also argue really unnecessary too. But
so we had a good time, and it was super fun to watch you dance, and just like squeezed all the juice we could out of Christmas. So Mohsen, missed you for that, buddy, but I know you're home happy with your family, and we wanted to just share on New Year's Eve a couple ideas about things we've taken away from this year, some things we've read, and then talk about our exciting plans, some illusions we've created about where we're going in 2021, and then hopefully y'all will enjoy following us along on that path. So anything you wanted to share from a New Year's Eve perspective, rolling in, setting intentions?
Yeah, well, I mean, all the last couple of years for us has basically put us in a position to go for it this next year.
Yeah.
And we're just going to go travel the world and have experiences beyond our comprehension. One of our book we listened to earlier this year as we road tripped across Canada was The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho, who a Brazilian totally pronounced it correctly. And in it talked about when you make a decision, you really don't essentially know what you're signing up for. When you make a decision, it's the smallest of ripples, and you really have no idea where it's going to go. You can probably think when you made a decision to go to university or college or accept your first-time job, one of those things, where it led you, the experiences that you had, you could have never predicted when you made that decision. And then if you look at it in hindsight's 2020, December 31st, 2020, New Year's Eve, you realize that you really had no idea what you were signing up for when you made that decision. And that when you now apply that to the now, you don't even really know where it's going to lead. And then I think there's just an element of trust or faith that it'll take you where you need to go, but you're already here.
Yeah, it reminds me of meeting Mark Castell. And just like one handshake.
Mark Castell?
One person. Yeah, I'm getting there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm getting there, buddy. He wants me to build context who that is. It reminds me of meeting Mark Castell. One handshake changed my whole life. It was one of the most pivotal moments. I was just about to graduate from Georgian College. It was April of 2016, 2 weeks away from graduating, and I showed up at this extracurricular event, and it was basically like speed dating, but for mentorship. And it was like a bunch of different tables set up, and you got 10 minutes with each person. And I walked inside, and one of the people I wanted to meet was the host of the event. His name was Chad Ballantyne. He owned the creative space, and I saw him talking, and I'll always remember this tall, lanky dude that had these ripped jeans, and he was the first person that I ever like actually noticed for sure was wearing one of those chains that attached from his pants to his wallet. Yeah. He just really stood out. And I walked straight up to them and interrupted their conversation because I wanted to talk to Chad. And then I went to the tables, and turned out that the guy that I interrupted, this tall dude, was actually one of the mentors and was sitting at the end. And I went through the event, and I got closer and closer, and then it ended, and I didn't get to meet him. And I'm leaving now. I got what I needed. I was looking for business advice for how to start a public speaking business. And I was stopped at the door by the same dude. His name is Mark Castell. He was the CEO of a company called Maintenance Assistant. And he said, "Hey, kid, I like your tenacity. Any chance you're looking for a job? Any chance you want to work in sales?" And so meeting Mark that day, who would have guessed?
Who would have guessed that where it would amount to is wearing a bright green Under Armour shirt sitting in Tulum, Mexico on December 31st up against
with my best buddy in the
some
whole
sort of
fucking
psychedelic
world.
mural with your best buddy. Yo, cheers.
Don't do drugs, everybody.
And Mark Castell is the founder of what was Maintenance Assistant and then rebranded as Fix. And Jonathan worked there. He then referred me. I worked there, as well as Mosin and Mark, who was there on Christmas. So
Mike Beluski, Costa Rica.
The things that lead there, and then so Fix just got acquired this month for $272 million.
We
USD.
did it.
So
Congratulations, Fix.
Congratulations, Fix and Mark Castell.
And the team.
Yeah, we owe a lot.
Seriously.
We're literally sitting here in Mexico while most people we know are sitting at home wearing masks.
Yep.
No, but just staying at home, not being able to do anything because we're lucky enough we escaped lockdown basically.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned from Fix, and keep it brief, and then move on to some of the points I had, is they really invested in their people. Yeah. And it reminds me of the quote where they say, aren't you afraid that if you invest in your people, they'll get really good and then they'll leave? And then to which you reply, what if we don't invest in our people and they stay? Yeah. And I just had that experience where every year I was given more opportunity. Every year they were investing more in me. Every year I felt like I was growing. And there's no way that I would feel confident in doing what we're doing now, personally anyway, if it wasn't for all the opportunity and all of the leadership that I gained from working there and all the resilience I gained from working there. So huge shout out.
Yeah, what an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Shout out Dan Shaw.
Yeah.
Well done. Shout out the whole team. What a James Novak, whole team. What a great time.
Yeah, and that's exactly to your point, which is when a door is open for you and you step through it, there is no telling where it's going to take you. Yeah. But having faith is knowing that if you match your skill set with the opportunity, then beautiful things will happen.
Absolutely. So what's one of the top lessons that you garnered this year, circa 2020?
It's one of the things I wanted to share.
Cool.
Iain's read James Allen, Think and Grow. It's As a Man Thinketh. We've referred to it on the podcast before. And there's 2 paragraphs that relate really well to an idea that I've heard before from Jim Rohn, which is the law of sowing and reaping. Do you remember?
I think I actually even heard this from him.
Oh, yeah?
I think at some point
think Jim
Rohn
says
mentioned as
Allen? James Allen?
I think he mentioned it at some point. Anyway.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful analogy for how the mind is like a garden. And I know Iain's read this so much because it shows up in his speech. Where, as an example, just to give you a very small example, I'm smoking a cigarette and Gabriel will say something along the lines of, "Oh, the weeds are sprouting in the garden."
Yeah.
And that basically the analogy is like, when you plant good seeds, like all the seeds of things you want, like success in your career, success in your relationship, success with your fitness, you need to be very intentional and work hard and be diligent and water it and make sure it gets the right amount of sun. But when it comes to weeds or things that you don't necessarily want, like addictions and bad habits, they tend to need no prompting or no
they
effort.
arise on their own.
They arise on
their own accord.
And so I wanted to share this piece because it reminds me of Jim Rohn's Law of Sowing and Reaping that I love so much and that made such a big impact on my life early on. And it says, "A man's mind may be linked to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind." And here's one more section. "Just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend the garden of his mind, weeding out all the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts, and cultivating towards perfection the flowers and fruit of right, useful, and pure thoughts. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understands with an ever-increasing accuracy how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of his character, circumstances, and destiny."
Mm-hmm.
That's heat.
It's heat, man.
Yeah, that's heat.
And what do you consider pure thoughts?
It just reminds me of something you share with me often, which is like it's very easy to feel like I'm in abundance, like with money or with relationships or with happiness when you have abundance.
Yeah.
And so in the same way where oftentimes we're waiting.
And just to confirm there, it's easy to be in the mindset of abundance when you have the external markers of your abundance. It's It's when you have all the money that you need to do what you want to do, then it's easy to feel financially abundant.
Sure.
When you have lots of friends, it's easy to feel abundant in friends. But what you're getting at is when those external markers aren't so readily apparent, then it's a little bit more trying or testing to maintain that same vigor of abundance of a mindset.
Yeah, it really tests your faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, it tests your faith, and then it reminds me that it's like a push pull. It's sometimes the external factors will be there to make it easier for you to get into that headspace of abundance, but oftentimes they're not there. And starting with gratitude. When you talk about what are pure thoughts to you, for me, it seems like starting with gratitude. I woke up this morning and I did 15 minutes of meditation. I read the 5th day of As a Man Thinketh morning journal, and I was just flooded with gratitude for you, and I was flooded with gratitude for my parents, and I was flooded with gratitude for Fix giving us opportunity to do stuff like this, and for Mexico for being open, and starting there, that type of pure thought, I think the fruits of that continuing to show up in your life are just inevitable if that's the place you start from, if that's the roots that you plant, the seeds that you plant.
Yeah, it just reminds me, there's a quote that says, when you change the way you look at the world you look at changes. And at the end of the day, you can get lucky and have external things, and this comes right back to Jim Rohn, and you can get lucky and have external things give you a jump financially, friends, opportunities. But if you don't match it internally through your mindset and
Your
your attitude and and growing and being, then it'll come back to where you are internally. So if you want to not even worry and have lasting and sustainable external resources, friends, family, relationships, financially, then you need to prioritize the internal abundance mindset. It's very easy, as I said, when things are external, going well, to feel good internally, like you're going well. But inevitably, when external things change, are you? I don't know where I was exactly.
Yeah, the thought that I have right now, as you let it just marinate a little for a second, is even people that, from my perspective, their teachings and their philosophy weren't very spiritual. They still had a spiritual undertone. Like, as an example, Jim Rohn, he would always talk about, don't ask how much you're getting paid here.
Yeah.
He would say, who are you becoming here? Right?
Yeah.
So we've been talking about these external factors and looking for them and using that as a tool to then reinforce the feeling. But if you go inside first, if you go into who am I becoming here first, then those other things show up.
Yeah, it's just, if you want more, then you have to become more. And
that's the challenge.
And that's the challenge. Because when things go well externally, if you don't grow out where that is, it will come back to you because you haven't, you got lucky. But then you're going to live in this constant insecurity that you're not going to be able to maintain it because within you, you know that you fully didn't earn it or are not continuing to do the things that would get you there in a sustainable basis. So I think, the focus needs to be on the internal things and being the kind of person that attracts things from the external world. And just as we talked about before, when you don't have your happiness married to the external things, it becomes easier to be successful with the external things because there's typically an inverse relationship between how needy or desperate you are for something to occur from a dependency on the outcome, and then how successful you are to do it. Because you often what happens is we get paralyzed into fear, paralyzed into inaction because we're so concerned about fear because we have this external thing that's going well and it's alive right now, but we feel as though it's with every beat of the heart of that external living thing, that it could be one beat closer to it dying, and then when it goes away, whether that friend or that relationship or that money goes away, then your sense of self-worth and happiness will go away with it. So it's about trying to do your best to cultivate creating an absolutely rock solid internal, so that no matter what happens externally, because yes, external things are going to happen that are not going to be good and not what you want them to have, so that when those do happen, you can sustain the mindset it takes to get through it and then attract new external things into your consciousness or awareness, life experience, whatever.
Yeah, you mentioned that something that reminds me of, there's a chapter on serenity in As a Man Thinketh, and in the first line it says, calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. Yeah, that cultivating that calmness of mind. Yeah, and then you've really proved that. It's funny how like kind of the clothes you wear can personify and say things about who you are. If you add that meaning to it, as an example, because there was a time in my life where I wore a dress shirt and a tie to school, and that was the persona that I was on. That was the personality I was on. And now, as Gabriel said, I'm just wearing athletic clothing, and I've got my psychedelic bandana on. And one of the reasons I brought it up is because when we got broken into a couple weeks ago in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, the man came into the house and he stole Iain's laptop, Iain's phone, Iain's wallet with 1,000 pesos, and also stole Iain's pashmina. Yeah. And we were just joking yesterday because I got Iain a new pashmina. It's like a blue one. and how like the color and the pattern is like way more representative
it's a little bit more
who
tranquil,
you've become as a man.
Yeah.
Because I really have noticed that is, even just this trip alone, BC road trip this summer in 2020 across to BC, I really noticed a no problem attitude developing inside of you, and it just continues to flourish, continues to get stronger. So, I think the pashmina you're wearing right now is a real good representation of no problem.
We're going through the tests. I mean,
the trials.
Mark Manson, who's the author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, I read his blog post from newsletter last week, and it talked about how he spent the most of his 20s traveling in 50 plus countries, doing the thing. And he said he compared it to altitude training.
Oh, cool.
In the sense that really high endurance athletes will go train in high altitudes where it's harder to bring in oxygen.
In Sweden or whatever. Yeah.
The whole point is to make practice harder than when you play. So when the game comes, then from a cardiovascular standpoint, it's easy. And so he equated that when he traveled around and did all these things and have problems come up all the time, you're practicing that no problem attitude and problem solving, so that when he said when he would come home for a couple weeks at a time to visit family, he said it's just things that would usually derail him would just brush off his shoulder. And tie that all back to this New Year's Eve show is the reason why he wrote about it in his post was a kind of a bright side, a silver lining for 2020, and that because 2020 was so difficult for so many people and it was so different and there was so many novel challenges, that it raised our ability to handle problems and difficulties. Big so time. That when they continue, there's going to continue to be problems in our lives and throughout the next years, but if we look at it through the right lens, we can actually have really gathered a lot of strength and experience and wisdom from 2020.
I couldn't agree more. And it totally goes back to what you were saying earlier, which is if you change the way you look at the world, the world that you look at changes. Yeah. Right? And so, Jim Rohn always said that, it's not about the wind, it's about how you set your sail. And he's referring to an analogy of, we talked about it on the show before, the wind of life, opportunity mixed with difficulty. It's going to happen to everybody. 2020 happened to everybody.
It just reminds me what I'm going to say now is from Jim Rohn. I think he's back in the 80s, and he's well known as a great speaker, business philosopher, intellectual. And he said he was in this board meeting with all these executives, and they all asked him like, "Hey Jim, we want to know how this next year is going to be, and how this next phase of life is going to be."
Know.
And he's like, "Well, gentlemen,
let me tell you,
I do know, and let me tell you, this year, and we can apply this to 2021, is going to be about like it's always been. It's going to be difficulty mixed with opportunity, or opportunity mixed with difficulty." And that's maybe
the
not
wind of life.
Maybe not what you want to hear, but
the wind of life.
It's gonna be opportunity mixed with difficulty, and difficulty mixed with opportunity, and
people trying to look on the bright side and find the kernels of wisdom and the gems and the silver lining, and even doing their best through it.
Yeah, and just from a lens, even turning those around, you can have a totally different perspective on life in terms of the world that you look at. When you change the way you look at the world you look at changes based on just turning around that previous sentence. Do you look at life as difficulty mixed with opportunity, or do you look at it with opportunity mixed with difficulty? Now, obviously, the answer is that they're mutually arising and they come together, but you can decide, if you so choose, to look at it in a way that serves you and favors you, as opposed to makes you feel like a victim that is imposed upon and has to deal with things that really shouldn't be there at all.
That is by far the biggest lesson that I took away from this year, is because there was no way to predict what was going to happen. There was no way to know where we were going to end up. But there was one thing that I could count on and that I could control, and the one thing that is in my control is the way that I decide to look at the world.
Yeah.
Like after I opened my eyes from the meditation this morning, feeling gratitude, every person I looked at I felt like they had a smile on, like, I mean, maybe it's because it's just New Year's Eve, but I've had that experience before where when I do the meditation first thing and I experience the gratitude first, just the way the world looks is more positive and more pure, and I took that away from this year, is that I get to choose the way that I look at it all.
For sure. And yeah, I mean, just to apply that, yesterday we came in late at night from Playa del Carmen here to Tulum, and we had originally planned to meet for the bus at 4, and then the bus wasn't until 6:30, and then we missed the 6:30, and then we didn't get on. The bus didn't leave the station until like 10 p.m.
Yeah,
and we got 10:15, something like that. We got at our hostel around midnight, and I mean, maybe we shouldn't have had so much privacy, high expectations for hostels, and the hostel looks cool, and there's cool art, and people seem nice, but there is no privacy at this hostel. Logistically, there's just zero privacy. There's 8 people in a room, and then the doors open to essentially another section of 8, but also a rooftop where people are on.
Music's playing, people are drinking.
And then there's the washrooms and the showers that are just solo units, and then the actual place where you wash your hands are just public space where people are just like walking around. Yeah. So you're brushing your teeth and people are just like around. So yeah, that was a good test to put it all in, because I mean I was listening to, because you got to be careful what you wish for too. You might just manifest the
and you got to be careful who you listen to.
Very careful who you listen to. So I was listening to Kanye West, and he's talking about how he said he asked God to give him faith, and then he took his mom. And he said, so he gave him the most painful thing he could have ever fathomed or imagined. So yeah, I think in general we gotta be careful what we manifest. I mean, I got let off the hook in comparison. I lost my laptop and my phone and some cash after talking in the last podcast, Jonathan and I, just about prioritizing the internal over the external, and that nothing external can shake you. And then like within 36 hours or whatever, just took all my shit. That's okay. That's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah. It's really no problem.
No problem. So,
yeah, I think the next step is the next step.
That's pretty astute.
Right? The next step is the next step. 2021 is going to be the most legendary year of our entire lives.
It'll be what it'll be, and it won't be what it won't be, okay?
That's exactly what it's going to look like. And the way I'm looking at it, it's going to be the most legendary year of my life. Just a ton of travel plans, and even just in the first 30 days, a lot of cool opportunities. We're going to be exiting Mexico.
Yep. You're going to be leaving Mexico, going to arrive into Costa Rica.
Good old Costa Rica.
And we're going to be there a couple weeks before our other friend and presumably his friend group are going to be meeting us there in Costa Rica as well. And then your dad's going to come down?
Yep. Enrolling my dad. For whatever reason, they weren't open-minded about Mexico, but Costa Rica seems like a great place for them. So my dad's going to come down to Costa Rica, and he's going to visit us for a couple weeks, so super excited about that. I've been there before, and I've only stayed on the east and southern coast, and we're going to go Pacific, man.
Jeez.
We're going to do Tamarindo and Santa Teresa, practice the old Spanish out there.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where it takes us from there. I think either Ecuador or Peru will probably be the next step.
Yeah. Peru would be insane.
A lot of adventure, a lot of excitement.
Many a thing to come very soon.
And just in the next 12 hours alone, we have a plan to do just a house party with friends here in Tulum, and then we're gonna make our way to the beach.
Yeah, and have a sunrise set of life. we're gonna watch the sunrise on 2021, and
see how it goes. Might make it a tradition.
Yeah. Well, pardon?
So who knows how it goes? It might make it a tradition.
Yeah, maybe make it a tradition. I think there's something. I think doing like being aware of the sunset on the year and then the sunrise, and it really is, if you just isolate it on a day, it's no different, but it's the meaning that you imbue in it. There's a lot of people that you can probably relate to that I'm not going to do anything for New Year's. It's just like it doesn't mean anything. It's a day just like anything else. And it's like, yeah, what you're gonna like have some drinks or get high with your friends? Like,
it's a good reason.
It's a good reason.
It's a good illusion to get together with the amigos.
Yeah.
And to party and celebrate. Like you were saying, it's like a rite of passage to celebrate.
Celebrate, because then when you're in the thick of the negativity, then you can actually have something that you know that it's working towards, as opposed to just being, oh, done, on to the next. Yeah. There's a ceremonial aspect to it.
Yeah, you're not forever crawling through mud. You can see some dry ground on the horizon, which is tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And I think because in general, we've become less, like throughout history, there's been just so many tribes that worship certain animals and did different ceremonies and rituals. And because as we've become more intelligent and we figure out a bit more about how the world works, and maybe we don't believe that the panther in the jungle is your Lord and Savior, although Harambe is. But I think there's an element of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and that within our human DNA and biology of this life, there's some sort of benefit to be had to having ceremonial practices and rituals, even if it doesn't have the same magical, objective truth beliefs that they might have had in past civilizations. But I think there's definitely, in terms of green space or low-hanging fruit, in terms of things that would just jive with our DNA, that have become very uncommon practice, that if they did become more common practice again, I think a lot of people would see a lot of benefit out of doing ceremonies and rituals and those kind of things, even from a secular perspective.
Yeah, I'm on board with most things that create community.
Yeah.
And bringing people together, as you were saying, for ceremony and for ritual, makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, as an example, like I really do feel like there was a clear before my men's weekend and after my men's weekend in terms of a ceremony that I took place in. It was just a weekend seminar where I feel like I was indoctrinated into masculinity in a way, or into manhood, and that was super empowering. And I look at the world differently as a result of going there. And I think, there's definitely more room for people creating their own version of that. It doesn't have to be that. It could be whatever they're into.
Yeah, true.
Ready to party?
What?
Ready to party?
Ready to party.
Okay.
Yeah, be careful. You bet might come out trying to compliment and end up slandering the men's weekend and got indoctrinated into masculinity.
That didn't sound negative to me at all.
No. I do. No, I guess it just comes around to connotation with certain words. I think the average indoctrinated, I've almost I know what you mean.
Well, for me, the context, the way that I look at it is before being a boy and now being a man. The way that I decide on those two is, not taking responsibility for everything that happens to me and taking responsibility for everything that happens to me. So, I guess it's possible that people may be listening to this with baggage of what masculinity is, or masculinity, or what indoctrinate, that specific word. But
I'm just thinking out loud.
It was,
I'm not saying like fuck you.
No, it was a. I guess a better word would be just a rite of passage.
Yeah, rite of passage.
Coming of age.
Coming of age.
And it really was. That year, 2018, was something special, man.
That was a coming of age year. Special. And then 2019 was fucking the beginning of real, probably some sort of spiritual growth or consciousness type stuff, as well as just partying. And then,
a lot of partying in 2019. We really needed that before all of everything got canceled. In
I would say, 2020 was just, I'd say, for me specifically, was a very like spiritual convalescence, dude.
It's like spiritual convalescence. So just in case anyone's wondering.
Yeah, just if anyone was wondering.
Like, I know it's not.
It was just
deal,
because
we
got we both got. I mean, it's funny how our lives have just totally matched up. We were in the same position at the same company, got let go on the same day in the same hour, and then we, as roommates,
best thing
that ever happened. And we basically had a whole bunch of time because it wouldn't make sense to go. We knew we were going to go on this trip on the most reasonable time frame as possible. We obviously ended up planning settling on November. But wouldn't have made sense, nor did we necessarily want to go start at a company and be like, oh, I'm so excited about this company, and then say bye in 6 months. I don't think that's a good look, and didn't need to, and didn't necessarily want to. So we had a very, in terms of wrapping up 2020, a very interesting year where we basically had March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, 8 months essentially where we weren't working, and you're just basically doing what we want. Within that we did a month trip out west. Yeah. But then otherwise, it was just, and what I mean by spiritual convalescence, a convalescence is a period of time in which you recover from some sort of sickness or illness. And the way I'm using it contextually is we live in this narrative, and it's not good or bad, and it's good and it's bad. But one of the downsides is part of the narrative that we live in the West is, you go to school, you get a job, you work for 40 years, and you have a family, and then that's pretty much it. And then maybe at some point you do a year or something like we're doing now of traveling. But keep in mind, with everything I just said, you're always doing something. You're actively in the process of massive action, and obligation as well.
Yeah, I don't know about massive action being that common.
Maybe not massive action, but massive busyness. No real long. This is what I mean.
Appropriate word.
No extended period of non-obligation. Because even if you're traveling, you have obligation to kind of, do things. And a lot of times people travel, they're traveling fast and they're going city to city for hostel for a night or two at a time. And it's just this frantic pace where we had our apartment in Toronto, and we because we had decided to live so frugally and we're paying such a small price while not having a formal income, it didn't not make sense to stay there. Whereas if we were paying $2,000 a month, we probably would have gone back and that's just eating up all this cash, but it wasn't a problem because it was so inexpensive. So we're just kind of, I know you had a little bit more regimented schedule in terms of waking up and doing those type of disciplines, and that jives with you. But for me, I was pretty much just, waking up when I woke up, reading what I wanted to read, spending time with the people, obviously COVID depending of who I wanted to spend time with, and just being outside of the mind, not waking up and thinking, how am I going to make money now? What am I going to do? And actually just wake up where the days become obsolete. Whereas you can kind of get, the average person can pretty much relate. It's Monday, it's Monday, I got to do this. Tuesday, okay, another day. Wednesday, it's hump day. Thursday, it's almost there. We're almost done. Friday, let's get through where it's Friday. Finally, I got Saturday, and you wake up on Sunday. No, it's Sunday. And that is the reality of the vast majority of the human population for much of their lives, for most of their lives. And it was very interesting to just get out of that mindset for a bit and reset, and then be able to, now we can build it and actually build and create and design the life that we want, as opposed to continuing the inertia of the one that was set forth for us.
Yeah, Jim Rohn always talked about, are you designing your life, or are you letting other people design it for you because their plans for you are pretty small?
Yeah, he's like if you don't make your own plan for your life, you will fit into someone else's plan for their life. And you know what they have planned for you? Not much. Yeah. Other people don't have much planned for you.
The other thing that I thought was really interesting, and let's cap this off with, because Mohar just called me. So our buddy Mohar, who's was on our men's team, is in around the area in Tulum right now. I knew I would gain a lot from being in Mexico, being abroad, and seeing how other people live. But I think what I've taken most away is from expat communities, or from people that are in other countries that are visiting here for a month or two at a time, because I have heard just dozens and dozens and dozens of different stories of how people lived and then ended up here.
Yeah.
And it just opened my mind so much to I can really do anything.
You can do anything, and you can live anywhere.
Anything,
and you don't have to be a full-fledged local now. Like you can just live anywhere, really.
Like just this morning, and I've had dozens of conversations that went along the lines of something like this. I met a guy who's 40 years old. He's working at the hostel, and he stays at a hostel for a week and works there for free. He works and gets free room and board. And he's been riding his motorcycle across the country. He said his dad passed away, so he decided to buy a motorcycle, and he's riding his motorcycle around Mexico. He's 40 years old. You can literally do anything you want at any point in your life.
Yes, and then the other hostel that we were at yesterday, there's just like a group of people that basically work at the hostel, and they basically just work for their room and board, and then they just hang out with their friends on a rooftop in the nice weather and smoke weed and shoot the shit and hang out. And is that going to be everyone's cup of tea of how they want to live their life? No. But in my opinion, there's a lot of people that would be happier doing that than what they're doing. And it's not between smoking weed on a hostel roof and working for room and board or doing what you're doing, but just opening up the horizons of what's possible. And how much is possible? A lot. And you can fucking go find out.
Yeah, and it's like, it reminds me of what we've talked about before. It's like life doesn't happen in black and white, it happens in the gray.
Yeah.
Right? Some people, like as an example, I got a message saying like, how can you spend 2 years traveling without working? And I said, well, first of all, you don't need to do that.
Yeah, it's not this or nothing.
I saved money, and that just happened to be the amount of time that I wanted to spend. And, who knows? Maybe it goes longer, maybe it goes less. That's not the important part. The important part is like, what do you want? And like, what's reasonable? You want to do 1 month, 2 months? You want to do 2 weeks? It's just like, whatever is going to get you into action, off the couch, and excited about being alive and to being here. I think that's the important part.
For sure.
It's like everyone that bought a ticket to come be with us in Mexico ended up canceling or extending their stay because they were enjoying themselves so much. So just, whatever pulling the trigger looks like for you, pull it.
Pull the trigger, dude. Not on a gun.
No. Ready to party?
Let's party, dude. All right, signing off.
New Year's Eve.
2020, baby.
Thanks for being here with us. Excited to share this moment with you, and we will see you
when we see you.